Good morning, this is Heather Hoffman, and today we're going to be making a card with a kind of a spring happy bright color palette, but using a Christmas stamp set. You might see there I had the Joyous Holiday stamp set out, which is very much of a Christmas set, but I kind of started looking at that little wreath on there, and while it definitely would work for Christmas, I thought it might be kind of fun to change up the colors and do a little bit something different with it. So I'm starting off with some Premier Polar white cardstock, and I'm stamping it on, I'm going to stamp it a total of 4 times on here with embossing ink. I'm using my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp all of them at once before I heat emboss them. I'm going to heat emboss them with white, but what I'm doing is lining them up in my MISTI and stamping them. With that detailed of an image and with clear embossing ink, you really don't necessarily have to, but I really like to stamp multiple times just so that I can make sure I have a really good impression and I haven't missed any spots, since they're hard to see with the clear ink. All right, now that I've got those all stamped on, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle white embossing powder onto all of them at once. This kind of assembly lines it so I don't have to do one thing at a time and then heat emboss and then go back and stamp and heat emboss. So I went ahead and heat set those now, and then off camera I went ahead and die cut those with the coordinating Joyous Holiday dies. So I've got them all die cut and ready, and I've pulled out just kind of a bright happy color palette. I'm starting off here with Piggy Bank ink, and I'm blending it over the top of that wreath. Because I heat embossed them in white, the white portion that's stamped is going to resist the ink, so it'll keep that white image. And I always love ink blending over it. Just seems like magic when that image kind of pops out. It looks like just kind of a white circle on its own, and then you blend the ink over and all of a sudden you can see the detail of that wreath image, which is kind of fun. All right, so after Piggy Bank, I used lime green, and then I used Bumblebee, and I'm finishing off here with tangerine dye ink. I love all these bright, happy confetti colors and mixing and matching my own color combos. All right, now I have a card base created with Premier Polar white cardstock, which is nice and heavyweight. I love it for card bases. And originally my plan here was just to go ahead and put them on here like this. I'm using baby wipe here real quick just to wipe off any ink that might have stuck to the embossing. You can use a clean dry cloth or a slightly damp. Just don't get it too wet because you don't want to smudge that ink. But at this point I decided it needed just a little bit more texture, so I pulled out another panel and die cut it with Diagonal Stitches cover panel. And I also used Premier Polar white so it would match in perfectly with my card base and everything. I trimmed it down a little bit to leave a space at the bottom. This is where I'm going to stamp my sentiment in a few minutes. So I wanted to leave part of my card base just plain so that I'd have a smooth surface to add my sentiment. All right, now that I've got that textured piece adhered onto my card base, I'm going to add each of these wreaths. I'm using, these are just thin foam adhesive strips that I have on hand. You don't have to use, you can use any kind of foam adhesive. You can use dots. One trick with foam adhesive is peel off the backing, and then those thin strips will curl around the edges of that. Now as I stick this last one on, I kind of skip through sticking some of them on. You might notice I left a little opening. This allows me to tie some twine around here and have it kind of fit behind that wreath nice and easy. So I'm going to tie that into a little bow, and I always just kind of fiddle and play with my bows until I'm happy with them. So I always end up trimming a little here, trimming a little there, and then kind of adjusting the bow and trimming a little more, just until I'm happy with it. Bows are kind of fun and fiddly, but I never count on getting them perfect on the first try. So if it doesn't quite look right, just kind of keep messing with it until you like how it is. And I like to trim off the ends and bits kind of slowly. That way I don't accidentally trim off more than I need to. And I can always take a little more off, but I can't put it back on or without restarting over with a fresh piece of twine. All right, I'm finishing off here with a sentiment. This is from Sentimentally Yours, which is full of beautiful, fun sentiments. Stamped it in Midnight dye ink there along the bottom. And this card is finished. Nice and simple, kind of bright and fun. I like all the white space and just the bright pop of colors. It'd be fun to mix and match those colors in lots of different ways. I'd love to hear what color combo you'd love to try. Thanks so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful day.